Nice. Okay, cool. Welcome, one and all, to Philosophy Roulette number 222, where we read and review philosophy online. Random things, usually that's why it's roulette. Whatever is new to the world of philosophy. Here we are on Phil Papers. I also take suggestions and have a... we'll read papers that community members suggest to me. So if you so choose, you want me to read something, as long as it's not too long. I do have a bit of a word count because once I get over like an hour or so, I get a little tired. It's hard to put one paper together all at once, because then people coming into the stream, it's like, well, an hour ago we said this. It's like, well, it gets kind of tough. All right, let's see what Phil Study says. Sent these Journal of Ethics on the top. Let's just see how big this one is. Right on the top, right there. Yitzhak Ben Bagji. Let's see. Ooh, just war theories. Haven't seen one of those in a while. We should go look at that. See if it's available. The power of soldiers. This is not this paper, though, is it? Transferred responsibility. Nope. Don't see it right here. Forthcoming 1 to 17. See, that one might even... Ooh, it's not. It's too new. It can't even... Not even showing up. That's too bad. It goes 1 to 17. I might squeeze in a 17. Alright. Whatevers. Let's see. I'll search for what's short. A note on deterministic updating and von Frossen's symmetry argument for conditionalization. So this is 12 pages. Let's take a look at it. Dynamic absolutism and qualitative exchange. Ooh, this is 10 pages. I like 10 pages. This is also 12. Inflated effect sizes and underpowered tests. How the severity measure of evidence is affected by the winner's curse. This looks like a philosophy of statistics or a probability sort of paper. Like how you're measuring evidence and... Well, let's just click on it. Let's see what we got, if any of this is available. On Google Drive. Let's see if this just loads. 1 to 9. I like that already. Well, hey. Alright, let's see if it's all math. Alright, so yeah, these are just probability updatings. See if it's... Because if it's too much, it's too much. I can't sit around reading this because that's unfortunate. But yeah, if it's too much math, it's like... Then I'm like, star, P... open parentheses. It's like, well, that doesn't make for a very good read. And I have no problem with the... Okay, this one's available too. So we might be reading something from Phil Studies today. Let's see how long it is in actuality. Alright, so 13 pages and double spaced. I like you. I like you a lot. Oh, let's go double check if it's not, again, formulas or whatever. I don't think it is. I mean, we've got like T1s and T2s, but you're not really escaping that in analytic philosophy, so like B Fido. B is a component of Fido. Alright, so let's grab this paper because it just seems like a good idea at the moment. And let's see what this one by Roquefort Miranda is, if it's available. Ooh, on the Phil Sci Archive, so that should be available. And this looks like very sciencey. So there's a more recent version. Clicky, clicky. This is the Phil Sci Archive, for those who don't know. This is another open access archive of philosophical work, based basically on the archive from just like physics and the physical sciences. Hey Firestorm, what's up? I think formulas is good. In general, equations and science help with brevity because an equation says a lot in a little. I completely agree with you, Firestorm. The problem is when I'm reading it, reading out formulas is extremely difficult. Like, let me show you what it gets to be. Because it's like, I'm like, X, like bold X sub I, tilde, script capital N, open parentheses, mu sub 1 equals 1.01, comma, sigma to the 2 over 1 equals 36. And then I'd have to do that for like indefinite amount of time, depending on how many formulas are in the thing. So it's like, I'd have to it's like they're really good because they say a lot in a little, but then when I have to go and explain what's going on really fast, is it's like double hard on me. So it's hard enough to do the philosophy, and I completely agree with you. When I write philosophy, I tend to use like simple formulas to compress a lot of thought into like a formula, and that helps because it's kind of like a diagram. People can like poke at like the different little spots on it. But like when I'm doing it this way, it's unfortunate because a lot of the philosophy like I end up working with, I can't read anyway. So it's like, what are you gonna do? But yeah, but that's the reason why I have that for here, because even just saying one sentence, I mean, people are not gonna. It's just not gonna work. I don't think. I mean, look at this. What am I gonna do? S sub p equals the big square root of 9s2 over 1 plus 9s2 2. S2. So yeah, we're gonna do the other paper. Long story short. So it's just a question of the formatting. What can I actually pull off? And basically, time paradoxes, still cool topics. Infinite regresses, metaphysics of time. Yeah, reading them out loud is just hard. But that's like, this is why for this sort of stuff, I mean, it's much better to do I just can't do technical philosophy here. So yeah, if you want to get the link to this paper, because I'd probably just read this dynamic absolutism paper, because, you know, who wants to, I mean, time paradoxes are cool too. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. And so there's a link, and if anyone comes late anytime, you can always type exclamation point paper in the chat, and the link will pop back up. So, I mean, if like this is cool with you guys, I will read a dynamic. What's it called? This is on time paradoxes and infinite regresses and metaphysics time. Should be fun. So, we'll see. Dynamic absolutism and qualitative change by Bahadır Eker. I apologize for how I say your name. In philosophical studies. Okay, here we goes. And thank you guys for showing by. How you doing, Firestorm? How you doing, Bewitched Frog? Hope you're having a good day. Let me know. Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to cut in, and I'll try and explain as best I can. Introduction. In his seminal contribution to the philosophy of time, Kit Feynman has constructed a particularly incisive version of McTaggart's paradox. On Feynman's construal of the argument, the problem with realism about tense, roughly what is more colloquially known as a theory of time, is that it is incompatible with the joint acceptance of three very general and at least prima facie plausible theories about reality. So realism about tense must come at the cost of giving up at least one of them. However, Fabrice Correa and Sven Rosenkrantz have recently objected that Feynman tacitly assumes a particular view about the nature of tensed facts, and that once that assumption is dropped, the alleged incompatibilism in question disappears. They also claim that the resulting version of realism about tense, called dynamic absolutism, is a better way out of Feynman's argument than the alternatives. I argue in this paper that dynamic absolutism does not constitute a genuine option for realists about tense. In the next section, I summarize Feynman's argument and Correa and Rosenkrantz's response to it. In section 3, I develop an argument against dynamic absolutism in the form of a quadrilemma. Finally, in section 4, I consider two possible replies to Correa and Rosenkrantz's behalf, and argue that neither of them is viable. Okay, so what we got going on here is, I mean, the author is, I assume it's a he, actually, I don't know, I shouldn't assume that. The author is going to tell us what the A theory of time is and what Kit Feynman's problem with it is, Fabrice and Correa's apparent solution, and then the author is going to go and be like, nope, it doesn't work, and this is why. So, it's a little bit of fun on another day where it's snowing here in New York, and it's just dumping snow on us. Thankfully, it's a lot lighter snow today, so I shoveled just before this, so I wouldn't have to do it now, and it's already, covered what I shoveled, but it's really light snow, so it's okay. Yeah. So, Feynman's McTaggart and dynamic absolutism. As already mentioned, Feynman's McTaggartian argument aims to show the incompatibility of realism about tense with three very general principles about the nature of reality. It is in fact a matter of some dispute how exactly these principles are to be understood, but here we can simply focus on Correa and Rosenkranz's interpretation of them. Realism. Reality is constituted, at least in part, by tensed facts. So this is a big old theory from 20th century philosophy. It's called Facticity. I was just thinking about it because it's one of these overlaps between Wittgenstein and Heidegger, that the world is a world of facts. That is kind of what the metaphysics of the world is that the world is comprised of states of affairs, and that's what a fact is. A fact tells you what a state of affair is. It is snowing outside, and that is a state of affair, and it is snowing outside now, and that would be a tensed fact because it has a time associated with it. Okay. Neutrality. There are at least two distinct times, t and t prime, such that some fact f constitutes reality both at t and at t prime. So something's happening over time, basically. There's two times, and some fact constitutes reality both now. So it was snowing and it is snowing now. I guess you could say the snow has continued. Oh, by the way, just to put my arguments on the table, I deny facticity. I deny the metaphysics of facts that is mostly assumed here. So this puts me on like the very outskirts of metaphysics, I think. So yeah, like I don't say the world is a world of facts. I mean, you can describe it that way, but I don't think it's a good metaphysics. Continuing. Absolutism. For any fact f, if there is a time t at which f constitutes reality, then there is no time t prime such that f does not constitute reality at t prime. So that means if like it's snowing now, anytime later in the past or whatever else, it doesn't matter. It's still snowing now. Like it being a different time, then it doesn't matter. If it's snowing now, it's snowing now. If it's not snowing later, that has nothing to do if it's snowing now. So that's an absolute thing. So once you like tense your fact, excuse me, then I'm pretty sure that's what this means, is that once you say, look, it's snowing now and that's a fact and that's true, it doesn't matter what happens at any other point. That fact is absolutely a fact. And coherence. For any fact f and f prime, any fact descriptions d and d prime, and at any time t, if at t, f and f prime both constitute reality, f satisfies d, f prime satisfies d prime, then d and d prime are not incompatible. So basically, yes, coherence, that two facts can't contradict. So if like you've got two different things at two different times, and that's fine, but the two facts at different times, even if they don't work together at the same time, at different times, it's okay. See, they both satisfy reality, and one satisfies one fact at a description, another description, then any two descriptions of reality can happen, especially if they're not at any at any one time. Oh, excuse me. So this is at any one time. If there are two facts, the two facts have to not be contradictory. So let me just see that one quick. Yeah, P and Q cannot be both true at the same time. So this is anti-dialethism, basically. It's just that you have to be able to have a coherent, non-contradictory description of the world. So, oh yeah, for all the people that showed up, I'm reading a paper on time paradoxes and stuff. So, what is this? It's on, so infinite regresses and time paradoxes. So feel free to ask questions along the way. Just let me know. So basically, these are just sort of a formal representation of basic things we think about time and reality. There's facts in the world. The facts don't contradict each other. Like if it's snowing now, then it is also not snowing right now. Like it's either it's snowing or it's not snowing, not both. You can't contradict each other. And basically, any two times, they could be different. The world could be different, but that's okay because they're at different times. Okay. To illustrate Feynman's argument as Correa and Rosenkranz understand it, let's look at a very simple example. Suppose that Fido is located at two times, t1 and t2, and is brown all over at t1 and orange all over at t2. At t1, then a fact that satisfies the description that the fact that present Fido is brown all over constitutes reality. Given absolutism, this fact also constitutes reality at t2. Yet at t2, a distinct fact saying the fact that presently Fido is orange all over also constitutes reality, again by absolutism, as well as at t1. But now it becomes clear that coherence must thereby be violated. Both at T1 and at T2, reality is constituted by facts that satisfy incompatible descriptions at both times. So the dog can't be both orange and brown, always. Correa and Rosenkranz object that for this argument to go through, one must assume the following principle. Fixed content. For any fact f at any times t and t prime, any fact description d, if f constitutes reality at t and t prime, and satisfies d at t, then f satisfies d at t prime as well. So it's saying the same facts holds for all time. Which, I mean, why would anyone think the same facts holds for all time? Hold at that time the fact, but why would any one fact that would just deny any change in the universe? Okay. Like fixed content. How would the universe stay fixed? That would be weird. Rejecting fixed content, Correa and Rosenkranz argue allow us to block the McTaggartian argument without having to give up any of the other principles Feynman considers, and this is precisely the basic idea behind dynamic absolutism. On this view, reality is constituted by the very same tensed facts at all times. Whichever time you consider, you always find the same stock of facts. However, although these facts remain numerically the same, they constantly undergo qualitative change and satisfy different fact descriptions at different times. What? Then why would they be the same facts if they keep changing? Alright, I have to keep reading. The simple story above involves, for instance, the fact that satisfies fact description, the fact that, presently, Fido is brown all over at T1. Call this fact B. Now, the dynamic absolutist believes that B constitutes reality also at T2, as absolutism requires, yet claims that it is satisfied at a different fact description at that time, namely, the fact that 1 day ago, Fido was brown all over. Aha. So that is what they're doing. They're referencing back to the previous time. So you have to always be keeping your index, your time index. You have to be on top of your time indexes whenever you state facts. Okay. In our story, there is also the fact that satisfies the fact that presently Fido is orange all over at T2, which we can call O. Just like B, O constitutes reality at T1 as well, but at that time it satisfies the fact description, the fact that 1 day hence Fido will be orange all over. So although B and O constitute reality at all times, thanks to the constant qualitative change they undergo, there never is a time at which they satisfy the incompatible fact descriptions, and thus coherence remains intact. Okay, so basically, this is trying to just like pin facts to particular times, and anytime you reference that one fact is allowed to vary. It's how you describe it by the time reference. So if it's snowing now, which it is, and I don't believe it, but it's snowing again, Moore's paradox for those people who care, then like I could say it's snowing tomorrow when it's not snowing, I can say it was snowing yesterday. And that is supposedly the same fact under this sort of scheme. Which, I mean, take it or leave it. It seems reasonable. Okay. Correa and Rosenkranz argue further that the qualitative change in tensed facts is to be explained in terms of qualitative change in tensed properties. Take B and O once again. Each of these facts have two components. Fido and the tensed properties B. Alright, so brown and orange, because it's the capital here, so that we can symbolize them as brown Fido and O Fido, so it's got these little symbols going here. Orange Fido and brown Fido, respectively. Now, Correa and Rosenkranz's view, tense properties like brown and orange, B and O, themselves comprise two more basic elements, a proto-property and a tense aspect. The proto-property of a tensed property is essential to it, but a tensed property undergoes qualitative change with respect to its tense aspects. The proto-property of the tensed property B, for instance, is what we would intuitively call all over brownness. At T1, B has the tensed aspect of the presentness and satisfies the property of description, the property of being presently brown all over. But at T2, it has the tense aspect of 1 day pastness and satisfies the property description, the property of having been brown all over 1 day ago. Since B is a component of the fact that Fido is brown, this constitutes qualitative change in the former is inherited by the latter. Okay, so basically you have to just keep your time and property separate. So you can vary the time, but you're trying to just sort of how that works with the brownness. Hi, Kuda. Welcome. Let me know if you've got questions. Yeah. So you can, if you follow, of course, you get, notifications from Twitch, but you can turn those off. You can also join the Discord And you can get notifications there too. I think that's working at this point. So if you want to like stay on top of the streams, I mean, I might start posting stuff to like the papers and stuff to the Discord as well. I'll see. Let's briefly take stock of the discussion so far. According to Correa and Rosencrantz, the kind of qualitative change that tensed facts undergo is the key to resisting Fein's argument. It is also supposed to be the only dynamic element in this otherwise static model. Indeed, it is what the passage of time ultimately consists in, and is supposed to explain in what sense reality changes as time goes by. All the facts involving Fido constitute reality at all times, but those facts themselves are subject to change. Even though Fido has all the properties at all the times at which it existed, it does undergo change because those properties it has undergo change with respect to their tense aspects, or so the dynamic absolutist supposes. All right, so I mean, it seems reasonable. I've had different haircuts. At different times, I've had different haircuts, and you can just say, "Well, I had that haircut at that time." So, ooh, okay. I mean, not so hard to not a hard concept to grasp, but you just have to keep separate that you have the haircut, and that's a fact for all time, but the fact is still indexed, and you have to always keep re-indexing it whenever you reference the fact, and that's the dynamic aspect here. So they're trying to do dynamic referencing on all facts, and that seems kind of complicated, so let's see what this author has to say about it. Facts about tense aspects, a quadrilemma. Not a dilemma, a quadrilemma. The main difficulty with dynamic absolutism, which takes the form of a quadrilemma, becomes apparent once we put aside facts involving tense properties of ordinary objects like Fido and focus instead on facts about the tense aspects of tense properties. So we're going meta-tense. Let, for instance, tau of B refer to the fact that the tensed property B has or comprises the tensed aspect of presentness, a fact that constitutes reality at T1. Okay, so we're going to talk about the tense of a fact when we're talking about a fact. Okay. But do facts of this kind constitute reality not merely at this or that time, but rather at all times, just like the ordinary kind of facts? Now, and here is the first horn of the quadrilemma, a negative answer to this question seems unacceptable for the dynamic absolutist because it effectively means giving up absolutism. But sticking to absolutism only leads the dynamic absolutist to the second horn of the quadrilemma. For facts about tense aspects of tense properties are supposed to constitute reality at all times, reality seems to be constituted at each and every time by incoherent facts. Okay, so Fido being brown and Fido being orange both constitute reality at T1 and as well as T2. Now, if the tense properties of brown and orange have the tense aspect of presentness at both T1 and T2, if in other words tau of B1 of brownness and tau of orangeness also constitute reality at both T1 and T2, then both of these times the fact that presently Fido is brown all over is satisfied by Fido being brown, and the fact that presently Fido is orange all over by Fido being orange. Thus, if the dynamic absolutist holds to absolutism and allows the fact about the tense aspect of tense properties constitutes reality at all times, her account will violate coherence. Okay, so what's going on in this sort of dense little paragraph, like second half of this paragraph here, the second horn is saying, look, if you're looking at the tense of the tense, so when this fact holds, and if it's a fact that the dog is brown, and then you're saying it's a fact that you're saying it's a dog, the dog is brown now, and then it's orange some other time, those are also facts about when you're saying it. But then you have to also take into account to those facts when the fact that you're recognizing the fact. And so if you have those things, but then it looks like you've got the fact that it's brown now, and then the fact that you recognize the brown now, and then you've got the fact that it's orange, and then you've got the fact that you recognize that it's orange, then those things, you're recognizing both that it's brown and that it's orange, and those things are now running into each other at the meta-tense level. So I think I'm explaining that, but let me know in the chat if it's a little complicated. So you've got these incoherent meta-level facts because you have to be able to generalize over the tenses, and since the facts hold at all times, then you're stuck, because even if you can pin a fact to a time by saying, well, it was brown today and it's orange in 2 days, the fact that those facts exist at all times, then when you talk about them, you're going to talk about them differently at different times, but then you're still going to run into the same problem with how you talk about them when you're talking about the tenses. Yeah. Okay. Of course, there's a familiar way of avoiding incoherent facts of the mentioned kind. Facts about tense aspects of tense properties can be internally relativized to the times. Accordingly, both at T1 and at T2, the fact about the tense aspects of tense properties would be precisely the following four. The fact that B has presentness at T1, the fact that B has one-day pastness at T2, the fact that O has presentness at T2, the fact that O has one-day futurity at T1. Clearly, these facts are not incoherent in any sense. But if the dynamic absolutist chooses this solution, then she cannot rightfully claim to endorse realism. For now, it certainly seems that realities being constituted by tense facts is ultimately a matter of there being certain tenseless facts about what tense aspect what property has at what time. So now you're having absolute facts because these are in absolute time somewhere. So this fact is like you're referring to like the future and the past of in a non-tensed way. These are just like out in space. If the dynamic absolutist conceives of facts about tense aspects of tense properties in this way, then her position is, as Feynman puts it, realist in name only, which is the third form of the quadrilemma. Okay, so if like you're going to stop tensing your facts, basically, just don't do that anymore. You're not talking about a fact at a time. You're just going to say, well, this is a bare fact of some sort. Then it's not really realism anymore, because reality is being constituted by, seems that it's by tense facts, but these have tenseless times. So you're talking about a fact out of time, and that's not real if you have a fact that's outside of time. Okay, so what kind of realism is it then? Yeah. And that's why you can say, well, look, it has like it's an all-time or some sort of weird thing, but that's why this quote from Feynman, the quote is doing here, saying, look, all other facts, like the dog is brown now, is like that's a fact of the world at a certain time. If you're going to start talking about, well, this is a future fact compared to this time here, then you're not talking about facts in the world. You're talking about like sort of like outside the world, and it's not really a real fact in the world. You're sort of getting out of it. It's more metaphysics. So that's kind of what I think the problem is here. You're not talking about real things. You're talking about metaphysical facts about the universe. Okay. But have not Correa and Rosencrantz already given us a recipe for constructing tense facts as constituting reality at all times without thereby violating coherence? Indeed, why not apply the original solution to the two facts about tense aspects of the tense properties as well? Take, for instance, tau b, the fact that b has presentness. So the fact that the dog is brown now is present to us. We know the fact. Now, we can suppose that this fact does constitute reality both at T1 and T2 as absolutism requires, but undergoes qualitative change just like Fido being brown. At T1, tau of B is picked out by the description, the fact that presently B has presentness. At T2, that same fact is correctly described as the fact that one day ago B had presentness. So the fact was true yesterday, it had presentness yesterday, and now it doesn't. Accordingly, although at T1 Fido is both brown and orange, and tau of B and tau of O both constitute reality, at that time tau of B is the fact that presently B has presentness, where tau of O is the fact that one day hence O will have presentness. Since facts about the tense aspects of tense properties undergo qualitative change along with the facts about the tense properties of ordinary objects, just like Fido, the dynamic absolutist can still endorse both absolutism and coherence. Okay, so it's getting complicated, but yeah, you can just then start talking about re-referencing the facts when the facts apply, whether they're present or not. The problem with this last horn of the quadrilemma should be evident, in applying her account of qualitative change in facts to facts about the tense aspect of tense properties. The dynamic absolutist appeals in effect to second-order tense aspects. Hence, their metaphysics will not include facts about the second-order tense aspects of facts about the first-order tense aspects of tense properties constituting reality at various different times. At T1, for instance, reality is partly constituted by the fact that tau b has the second-order tense aspect of presentness, whereas T2, a numerically or merely qualitative different fact, namely the fact that tau b has a second-order tense aspect of one-day pastness, partly constitutes reality. But now the above argument can be run once again, this time focusing on such facts about the second-order tense aspects of the facts about the first-order tense aspects of tense properties, and the dynamic absolutists will have the very same options explored above. Thus, the idea of combining absolutism and coherence by rejecting fixed content and invoking qualitative change in fact results in a vicious regress. At every turn, one will be required to appeal to a higher order of tense aspects in order to explain qualitative change in facts in question. Bubba bloop, oh my god, yes, I know 2 months. It's like 1 month and a few days, I guess. Thank you, Bubba Bloop, I appreciate it. That's awesome. Thank you so much for the support. It's like everyone should go hang out with Bubba Bloop for a bit. Although he's always streaming like when I have to sleep. But I try to stay up, but I have to get up in the morning, man. Okay, let me just hey Zane, what's going on? How are you doing today? And how you doing, Bubba Bloop? It's snowing again here in New York. It's just like madness. We don't normally get this amount of snow. It's been a lot. Yeah, so basically what's happening here is that at every time, by using this sort of methodology of saying, well, when is a fact true? You say, well, a fact's true at a certain time. And then you say, well, when is the fact that you just said that fact true? Then you also say, well, that fact that I just said that is true at a certain time. But then you have to keep doing that to always keep putting the time index onto your facts. And so you never can actually get all the facts indexed, because at any given time when you start tensing a fact, then you have to give it a time index. But then you have to be like, well, did you time index that thing that you just did? Then you have to time index that thing. Then you have to time index that thing. And they say you never actually can be never think of this as the real world, because you're always having to go up and up and up a metaphysical level. So, yeah. Which is, alright, so what is the construction of this essay, basically? Basically, if you want to have a certain view of time, that a fact just holds for all time, if it's snowing right now, that's a fact, it's always going to be true, because it is snowing right now. It's a theory of time. But making that fact, that theory, fixing that fact to a specific time is not easy, and as soon as you start talking about the fact and the fact of the fact and the fact of the fact of the fact, that's what's throwing here. The fact that you can just keep talking about the fact and the fact of the fact, and then you no longer can index those to times, because you can always keep making more facts. Okay. Is time part of reality? See, that is exactly the question here. What is your theory of time, and where can you... this is exactly kind of what is getting pushed on here. The Rosencrantz and... where's the name? Correa and Rosencrantz basically are saying you can modify time. It's not really the reality. They're saying the fact is reality, and the time can be not the same. It's not the same kind of reality. And so that is exactly what's going on here. They are prioritizing time, or they're changing the priority of time with respect to the rest of reality, and allowing the time to be dynamic. So it's not exactly the same anymore. And so this is, maybe that is the nature of time, that it is special. In physics, it is kind of treated as a dimension, but that it's a sort of a special dimension. So it's this is the question: what is the property of time, and where does it fit into reality? So that's kind of what's going on in the background. So it's a good question. It's the other thing is this sort of partness. You get into a lot of trouble. People try to always analyze, what do you mean by a part? It's well, we don't quite know exactly what we mean by partness when it comes to time. It's my hand is part of my body, but is time part of reality? How could you separate it? You could separate my hand off my body, please don't. But So it's like, that's kind of the thing. Like, how can you separate it out? I don't know. But that's exactly what they're doing here. They're separating it out by allowing it to be dynamic. That's how they're changing things. Okay, continuing. The regress and its viciousness. The above argument seems very troubling for dynamic absolutism, but it is worth exploring how Correa and Rosenkranz might attempt to resist it. The first three horns of the quadrilemma are clearly unacceptable for dynamic absolutists, as they each involve giving up one of the constitutive commitments of their view. Indeed, the quadrilemma can be thought to boil down to a dilemma between effectively abandoning dynamic absolutism, which is supposedly precisely to be a view that endorses all of the Feynman principles, and generating a vicious regress. I suspect, therefore, that dynamic absolutists would rather target the fourth horn. More concretely, the dynamic absolutist might deny that there is any regress to worry about in the first place. Or agree that a regress does indeed ensue, but dispute its viciousness. Okay, so the author here thinks that the author just thinks that the targets, Correa and Rosenkranz, should just like bite the bullet, it sounds like. Maybe. We'll find out. One reason why the dynamic absolutist might want to deny that there is any regress, vicious or not, is that he might not be willing to admit any facts about the tense aspects of tense properties. Indeed, some of what Correa and Rosenkranz say when addressing the worry that all that dynamic absolutism has to offer is a B-theoretic metaphysics in disguise that suggests that they might be attracted to a strategy of this kind. They respond to the said worry by arguing that unlike in a B-theoretic model, there is room in their metaphysics for a property that can genuinely be gained and lost, the property of being present. This property is instantiated by times, which, according to Correa and Rosenkranz, reduces to classes of contemporaneous tensed facts. That is, tense facts that share the same tense aspect, or more precisely, tense facts that involve tense properties with the same tense aspect. Any such class C has an index associated with it, in which the number n such that all members of C have the tense aspects of the n days from presentness. Yeah, so this is the indexing I was talking about before. All facts have to be indexed, and once you index stuff, you can sort of like, you're always referring back to the index, and that's kind of like the index is the reality here. The time is not, but the index is. So it's like you're always referring to the index of when this happened, so the time is sort of like this index now. The property of being present is thus defined as the property such that always for all x has it if an x has index 0. See, it's not at time, it's at index 0. I always like it when I get stuff right. I got that right really quick. So happy. Okay, they then raise a concern that is similar to the one that underlies the quadrilemma above. It might, however, now be feared that once we admit the existence of a property that can be lost, we are bound to reject the absoluteness of constitution of after all. For supposing that a given object X presently has property F and will fail to have that property one day hence, it will seem that the fact that X has F will presently constitute reality and fail to do so one day hence. Yeah. So yeah, if it's like, it's, again, this is worried about if you have the property of snowing, and that's supposed to be a fact for all the time because it's snowing right now. And then in the future, the fact that it's not snowing is fine, but it was snowing one day hence, it's still a fact. But then they're saying, look, the time is different, and so it seems like it lost the fact that it's snowing right now. So, yeah. Correa and Rosenkranz's reaction to this concern is to deny that the fact that pi has the property of being present, where pi names the present time, refers. They argue that the present truth of pi has the property of being present is to be explained instead by a universal fact, namely by the fact that for all facts f that are members of pi, f has a tense property, as is component whose tense aspect is presentness. They claim that there is indeed no problem in taking this universal fact to constitute reality absolutely, as you will also undergo qualitative change in accordance with the following principle. For all n days from the present, u is the fact that for all f that are members of pi, f has a tense property, as its components whose tense aspect is the tense aspect of n days from the presentness. Okay, so this is basically lumping all the meta properties of being present into one fact. And they're just going to say, all right, look, there's a singular fact, and they're calling it U, that says all the facts about facts. It's okay. So, like, there's a fact that it's snowing, but if you're going to talk about the presentness of the fact that it's snowing, that's only one big thing. That's only one metaphysical problem. And they're just going to throw it all on you, and you say, look, you can deal with you on its own, and that's fine. That's okay. Okay. Whatever the merits of this response within its specific context, it certainly does not go nearly far enough to address the general issue raised in the previous section. Note first that Correa and Rosenkranz's refusal to assign a reference to the fact description, the fact that pi has the property of being present, seems to be motivated at least partly by their reduction of time to classes of contemporaneous tense facts. A similar reason does not seem to be available in the case of facts about various qualitative states of tense properties. However, so basically, they're just getting called out. They're saying, the author here is being like, that is ad hoc. You're just making up this one big fact to solve all your problems, and it's not motivated. Because, like, look, you're saying this is a special fact about tense properties, and you're going to solve your special fact, but that's not fair. Because you can't just be like, well, this is special, and we're not going to worry about the special one. Okay. Further, the above response appeals to a universal fact that is supposed to undergo qualitative change, just as the ordinary facts about the tense properties of objects do, and presumably there will be certain facts about the various qualitative states of that universal fact, whatever exactly this might mean. Yeah, see, the author here is like betraying themselves. They don't like this universal fact, whatever that might mean. They have no idea what this universal fact is because they just previously called out that they don't know what the difference is of a universal fact versus an everyday fact. But this is all that is needed to get the argument from the previous section going. Suppose, for instance, that at some t, reality is partly constituted by the fact v that u is the fact that for all facts f that there are members of pi, f has a tense property as its component whose tense aspect is presentness. The question is now whether v constitutes reality not just at t, but also at all other times, as is required by absolutism, and if so, how can this be squared with coherence and, of course, realism? More generally, Correa and Rosenkranz argue that endorsing qualitative change in tense facts is the key to reconciling the theses Feynman takes to be jointly incompatible, and that qualitative change in tense facts is grounded in the constant qualitative change that tense properties undergo. Tense properties are entities that Correa and Rosenkranz explicitly commit to, and their being in different qualitative states at different times plays a crucial explanatory role in their account. Thus, facts about the qualitative states of tense properties are indispensable for the dynamic absolutist metaphysics. Dismissing their existence seems therefore not much of an option. Alright, so I guess what happened in this thing is, look, if you're going to throw all of the stuff into one area, it violates the motivating principles to begin with. Because you've got like these facts in the world. You're saying, look, the world's full of facts. It's snowing right now where I am. And if you're saying, well, what about the fact that right now that fact is present, that it is snowing right now? And if you can put all of those together, well, that's okay. But like it completely blows up the initial motivation for your story. So you've sort of betrayed the motivation. And so if you try to get yourself out of your problems by doing this sort of trick, you've basically betrayed yourself. Okay. But perhaps there is no need anyway to try to avoid the infinite regress that dynamic absolutism seems to generate. Indeed, a theory involving an infinite regress does not ipso facto constitute an objection to it, as in some cases in certain theoretical contexts, an infinite regress is a completely harmless feature of a theory. If it turns out that the regress that the fourth horn of the quadrilemma above leads to is of this benign kind, that Correa and Rosenkranz have nothing to worry about after all. Yeah, so. Though it seems undisputed that at least some infinite regresses are vicious, it is far more controversial what the viciousness of vicious regresses consists in. What about a vicious regress makes it vicious rather than benign? Still, many philosophers think that the viciousness of an infinite regress has something to do with the explanatory task it is meant to perform. Ricky Bliss has recently argued, for instance, that vicious infinite regresses typically involve a specific kind of explanatory failure, and two of her comments on this are particularly relevant in the present context. That it consists in the fact that the explanans is of the same form as the explanandum. The phenomenon for which we are seeking an explanation reappears as its own explanation. And that the problem is repeated at each level of the analysis, but it arises at the very first level. In a similar vein, Ross Cameron emphasizes that in a vicious infinite regress, the trouble is not simply that a new question is generated with each answer, but it is that the answer is always postponed. At each stage, the explanation given relies for its success on the next puzzle being solved, but since each offered solution generates a new puzzle, the promise of an explanation is always postponed and never fulfilled. Okay, so what exactly is the problem with vicious regresses? Maybe in math it's a certain thing, but if you're trying to describe the world the way time is, then you've got a problem if you never can solve your infinite regress, because we can't think of the solution at that point. And so I guess there's two ways to say it. There's either always a new puzzle, or you're never actually solving the problem. You're just sort of like spinning your wheels. And that's kind of what the Ricky Bliss, I think, is saying here. I've seen Ricky Bliss give a talk before. She's nice. Very smart. It may be that some infinite regresses are vicious without having any of these characteristics, but we can at least agree with Bliss and Cameron that those that do display these explanatory deficits are indeed vicious. To see that the regress dynamic absolutism generates is among the latter, let's examine the case a bit more closely. The central feature of Correa and Rosenkranz's response to Feynman's argument is qualitative change in facts. It is this metaphysical doctrine that underlies their rejection of fixed content and is supposed to reconcile the Feynman principles. Thus, it is the explanandum we are interested in. We want to know how exactly qualitative change in tense facts works. Correa and Rosenkranz tell us that facts change qualitatively because they have components, tensed properties that change qualitatively. But this response effectively appeals to certain facts about the various different qualitative states of tense properties, and given Correa and Rosenkranz's metaphysical commitments, those facts themselves must undergo qualitative change. Hence, this precisely is the crucial point, even at the initial stage. The explanans is of the same form as the explanandum. So that means the thing you're trying to explain is the exact same thing as the explanation. So if you were trying to explain something with the same thing, it's not an explanation anymore, because you've not gained any new knowledge, any new information. If there's no new information in an explanation, and you're just repeating the thing to be explained, you haven't done any work. As Bliss puts it, the dynamic absolutist tries to explain qualitative change in certain facts in terms of qualitative change in others, and since each new level of the regress introduces yet further facts that themselves must undergo qualitative change, the phenomenon we are interested in, qualitative change in facts, never actually gets explained. In order to understand how facts about Fido and its tense properties change qualitatively, we need to understand how facts about tense aspects of Fido's tense properties change qualitatively, and to understand the latter change, we have to understand how facts about second-order tense aspects of the first-order tense aspects of Fido's tense properties change qualitatively, and so on ad infinitum. They actually wrote various different... philosophy writing is convoluted, Bubba Bloop. This is actually reason for this kind of paper. This is actually very well written. Like, these papers are extremely difficult to write, and I'd actually say this is one of the better written papers in this area because of the sort of all the technical things that can go wrong, all the technical things that need to be explained, and so all the different sort of things that can happen here. This is actually pretty well done, even if you are going to disagree with some of like the phrasing. This is not bad, actually. It's such a common phrase, but it sounds like such filler to me. It's annoying. In philosophy especially, there are so many weasel words and filler words that people use to make it sound like they're saying anything. And in some contexts, as Firestorm says, it might make sense. In other contexts, it's just you're trying to emphasize that things are different. And yeah, then it comes down to exactly what are you trying to express there, and do you back that up, or you just say it's unnecessary in this case, as you say, or is it filler? And there's always a question about like what is flair like in these sorts of papers. Like, do you get yourself a little bit of leeway to like emphasize your point, even if it's not like technically the best, or is it there's a little bit of a rhetorical worry. You still have to get your point across it, and sometimes with imprecise language. So it may be unnecessary, but what are you gonna do? And like I said, I think this author here, Eker I don't know how to say this person's name, but I think they did an admirable job, given the difficulty of the subject matter. So, and when I write, I'm always like weasel word, weasel word, weasel word, weasel word. Take it out. If it's not doing any work, then it should not be there. Like it's only going to harm the paper, because it's only going to confuse people if you're saying things that you don't need. Like either you're saying something you need, or you're going to mislead people. But like those are the only options. Okay, the problem certainly isn't. Yeah, if you have any questions on this, it's basically okay. I thought it was actually somewhat poor weasels. I know they have a bad rap. The problem certainly is not that the claim that facts undergo qualitative change gives rise to an infinity of ever higher order of facts, but rather that even that infinite amount of facts fails to answer the question we have asked at the very beginning. At any given stage of the regress, the explanatory buck is passed to the next stage. Yeah, like let me just point this out right here. This sentence right here, the explanatory buck is passed to the next stage. Like using something like a buck being passed, like a little metaphor in like a paper here where you've got like Latin going on over here. Yeah, we've got a bunch of Latin. We've got Fido the dog. Technical words here. First order tensed aspects of Fido's tensed properties. Like, this is a lot of stuff happening all at once. You can just see, like, look, Latin. You got, like, technical language. You've got metaphor. It's like, getting all these things to work together is a real problem in philosophy to, like, be clear enough. Okay. So you're always passing the buck to the next metaphysical stage is what it is. We are simply being told that the explanatory debt will be discharged by certain other facts without any actual payment on the horizon. See this? Right there, and this is the little bit of flair that this author got to write. The little itsy bit of flair right before the conclusion. They got the explanatory buck. You've got like horizon, payments, explanatory debt, discharged by facts. Like this is sort of like this is a cutesy sentence right here as far as philosophy goes. It's like well done. So it's like, but this is the limit of like what this author is able to do given the topic. Like I'm sure they can write a more entertaining paper, but like this is a philosophy paper. It's not meant to be like literature. It's not meant to be like well written in some sense. It's supposed to get like the point across. But they gave themselves this last leeway on the last sentence of the paper before the conclusion to actually give themselves a little bit of fun. Okay, so I feel this right here. So, conclusion. In this paper, I have investigated whether Correa and Rosenkranz's dynamic absolutism can provide a satisfactory response to Feynman's McTaggartian argument. The initial attraction of this alternative theory is its promise to reconcile the prima facie plausible principles Feynman takes to be jointly incompatible. However, dynamic absolutists fail to deliver on this promise. Their view either collapses into one of the versions of realism already recognized by Feynman, or else results in a vicious infinite regress. Thus, in order to circumvent Feynman's argument, tense realists will still have to give up on one of the three theses considered by Feynman. Okay, so this is just a review, not even it's like summary in some sense. No, this is a nice paper. I mean, like I said, difficult topic. You've got very technical people working here. If you try to go read Kit Feynman's work, it's like, he's very, 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 very competent. It's like all this sort of like formulas and time and lots of concepts. So what happened here, just in basic. You've got these sort of like, this is what Feynman did. He took what looked like a very reasonable way to talk about time and reality and showed that it doesn't work. And then these people said, look, we can fix that. But the problem was they can fix that only by talking about facts themselves. And once they start talking about facts themselves and what time they exist at, they open themselves up to the regress. Once you start talking about the time that a fact exists at, you can talk about the time that that fact existed at, and the time that the fact existed at. And you never get to solve when did the fact actually, when is the fact real. So, you're always going to have another fact that is outside of time once you start doing this. So, to like sort of answer your question from earlier, Firestorm, is time real? This paper argues that according to Rosencrantz and sorry, I keep blanking on the name. According to them, Correa and Rosencrantz, basically no. The answer would be no. Time isn't real because, or the time isn't absolutely real in the way they want, because you're always going to have facts that are outside of time. And anytime you try to like retemporalize them, give a tense time to that fact, then you just gave yourself a new fact that would be outside of time again. So, if you want to hold on to the realism, that's a problem. Alright, if you guys have any questions, let me know. This was a cute little paper. I mean, it's basically one argument to show that the methodology employed by Correa and Rosencrantz comes back to bite them in the butt. So, if it comes back to bite you in the butt, that's what happens. Seemed like a good idea, but it failed in the end. At least according to this author. Maybe there's other ways out. Ugu, what's up? A bit late for me to do philosophy 4 a.m. here, but just pop in. Yes, please get yourself some sleep, Ugu. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Whenever Firestorm says, whenever I think of time, I just think of how Feynman diagrams can be read backwards and forwards and still have meaning. Yeah, see, that's always a real interesting thing. The diagrams in physics, mostly physics has to be, you have a bad sleep cycle now? Well, I appreciate you coming by. Physics, diagrams, the Feynman diagrams, yeah, you have to understand they have a lot of metaphysics of time built into them, because the way physics generally views the world is that it can be run forward and backward according to the laws of nature. So like if the laws of nature are going that way, it's like, yeah, it still means something, but it can go this way. And like it kind of, in certain cases, it doesn't matter which way you're going. So it's like, it's a lot of there's a lot of philosophy behind that. Like a lot of, why should that be the case, that you can read something in different time scales, in different time directions. So, yeah. And that's actually one of the black hole problems. The black hole problems basically is like that you're losing information to black holes because the light can never get out. And so you can't run time in both directions. The laws of nature aren't the only source of evidence for the arrow of time in physics, though. Some people like Tim Maudlin appeal to other entities in physics to get the temporal arrow. Others appeal to entropy. Yeah. Sure. There's a bunch of stuff that has to do with the arrow of time, and I'm definitely not an expert on that stuff. One of the earliest bloggers of philosophy, guy did Soul Physics, was a website, and I forget where he was at now. He's in like Oxford or something, but he used to work on this stuff, and so there used to be a blogger who used to write about the arrow of time, and it was cool stuff. But this is like a long time ago, back when people thought blogs were going to be the thing. So, but yeah, do I know anything else? Nah, I don't know much else. Firestrom says, I think the concept of entropic time is the easiest way to avoid errors in the physics community. Yeah, entropic time is interesting. Hot take, blocks are based. Yeah, definitely more niche. They're still good, but I mean, you're finding you have to like kind of look for them now. It's like the social media is king, for better, for probably worse at this point. You hate Fido? Yeah. I was wondering why this author, like in terms of like writing a philosophy paper, why are they talking about Fido? Like some sort of dog that is orange or brown? Kind of a weird, like I don't really understand the point of using Fido or something. But yeah, but that's actually the point, Ugubi. They're trying to show how this works on the most ordinary of ordinary things. Yeah, and one of those annoying, mundane boomer examples. I was actually wondering when I read this, was that an example that someone else had used? Like, it wasn't their original example. Like, did they just inherit it from Correa and Rosencrantz, and so they're just using the same example for consistency? I don't know. What if the light-hitting phyton is oscillating between orange and brown at T1 and T2? Yes, that's exactly the problem that's getting solved here. Everyone uses phyto. Yeah, different dog name maybe. Did we ever get any good cat names? Schrodinger's cat. Did Schrodinger's cat have a name? Spell the T. The Time blogs remind me of that old TimeCube website. TimeCube website? What was a TimeCube? Oh, I don't remember no TimeCube website. You might disappear if you say you don't think and you don't exist. Firestorm, careful. Ghost of Descartes. I had a, I don't know, neglected childhood. Like what? There was a time cube? Maybe I saw it. But anyway, do you guys have any more comments about this? I mean, I might just play some Minesweeper after this. But I think that's it for the paper, unless you guys have other comments. I mean, we could keep discussing time too. I don't know. Oh, a wild conspiracy theory website? Could be fun. Yeah, okay. So I think that's it. Can you sum up the argument since I came in late? Yeah, sure. I can do a quick recap. Okay, so yeah, internet. You know, the internet. We're not good enough at the Internet Archive. Whoever is running that is just like saint or something. So basically, if you're talking about A theories, like a Kit Fine A theories of time, where basically you've got absolute time, absolute facts, everything is just like if it's snowing where I am right now again, which is ridiculous. I can hardly believe it. But if you got A theory, then you want to say, look, yeah, that definition, I agree, but like they're trying to just do everything tensed. Time cubes, okay. I'll check that out in a minute or two. Bubba bloop. So, what's happening here is you've got like some basic facts that you're tensing them so that you can be like, the fact holds at all time. Hey Tyrell, what's up? How you doing today? This is a paper. I'm actually just gonna go over a quick summary. It's called Dynamic Absolutism and Qualitative Change. Now, in philosophy, there's A theories of time. Basically, I think the A theory just says time is absolute, and basically, if you have a fact holds for all time, because if it's snowing right now, which it is right here, that's always the case. It's always snowing right now, right here, because that's a fact, and the fact holds across all time and space. So, how do you can describe that a few different ways. Reality is constituted by facts. There are two different facts, like there are at least two different times, and then you can have a fact that holds at different times. Then any fact that holds is always a fact. Facts always hold, and then all facts have to like be coherent for all times. And what happens is you can say, well, look, if something changes from like being brown to orange, then it looks like the fact is changing. What these people do, Correa and Rosencrantz, is they say, look, you index everything to a tense time. You actually specialize in the philosophy of time, so I might be able to clarify as we go, but this is great. I'm going to read the paper and follow along. Okay, yeah, cool. I mean, there's the link to it. That's awesome that you probably can correct a lot of things I say in that case. But I mean, basically, what happens here is that they're trying. We've got experts better than me. So what's going on here is that Correa and Rosencrantz are trying to, basically index everything to a time. So you're saying, look, it's if it's snowing now, that's fine. But like if you say it's snowing now, referring to this, then you have to say, well, it was snowing yesterday if you're saying that tomorrow. And if it's 2 days from now, you're saying it's snowing is indexed to 2 days ago. Meanwhile, you have not taken a single philosophy class. That's what we're doing here, Firestorm. We're trying to break it down so it at least makes some sense. If you tense all your facts, like you index them to a time, can you do that, and does that make sense? And the author here is saying no, it doesn't work. Because why? Because then you can then talk about the fact of a fact. When is the fact present? If the fact is present at a time, like it's snowing right now, and that fact is present right now. Bubba bloop. Then you create a regress, because you talk about, well, when is the fact of the fact present, and when is the fact of the fact of the fact and the fact present, ad infinitum. And so that's kind of what happens. If you want to hold on to this view of the world that the facts just kind of hold in the A theory of time, then yeah, that's exactly what's happening in this paper. And so it's a reasonably straightforward argument, and I was commenting that, like, getting all the details right in this stuff, it's difficult, but I thought the author did a very good job getting it all sort of clear, kind of in a sort of small little package. And so what happens is you start looking, so you've got the Brown and Arch, and then you've got the when it's present, the sort of the meta level fact. Can't you? That's exactly what the authors the Rosencrantz and Correa try to do. They do one big fact, and the author here had a argument against that. Basically, I think they just called it ad hoc, by saying, look, why should you have one big fact about all that when you're treating all the other facts as time? Oh no, I don't like using facts either, but this is kind of where you are. This is sort of where the world is. Let me see if I can get down to that big fact time. See if I can find it. This one we've got indexes. Yeah, okay. So this is exactly here. This is the big fact is fact U. And so you think facts are iffy. Oh, I deny facticity. I'm anti-fact, in fact. Okay, so pi has a property of being present is to be explained instead by a universal fact, namely by the fact that U has that for all facts F that are members of pi, F has a tense property as its component whose tense aspects is presentness. Yes, like a maximally specific proposition. This is A theory. Yeah, so this is A theory that smells like B theory. That's kind of what's happening here. This is A theory that's leaking into B theory. See, this is what's going on in this paper. The author is accusing Correa and Rosencrantz of only being A theory in name and really being like sort of secret B theorists. So B theory, all facts are indexed to a time, but no facts are tensed irreducibly. So, but that's the thing, like, these are irreducible things. So yeah, so there's no facts about times is sort of the A theory, is because there's only tenses. You're trying to just index everything. But thank you for writing this down, Tyrell. So I'm anti-fact. I had philosophy because I passed by saying everything is subjective, so they can't fail me. Oh yes, that I'm sure your philosophy professor is going to be happy with you. But you just say that. That's your you're gonna get like an A-, because I mean, it's not perfect, but like it's close. And did you pass, Bubba Bloop? Anti-realism. That might actually work. If you don't do the homework, Uguri prefers presentism, eternalism rather than A/B theory, since it focuses on the ontology more than theories with facts, although many of the moves may be the same. Okay, you want to hear about my anti-facticity? Okay, I can talk about that after. But I just want to go over if you what was going on in this paper, because I just talked about it for an hour, and now you guys, I'm doing a quick recap of the paper. Okay, so then you've got like this one big fact. Let me just finish up the recap. And the authors say, look, that's ad hoc, basically. This is my understanding of what the author says. They say, it's kind of ad hoc, and even if it isn't, you can still make facts about that, and then it would be weird to have facts about the big fact. You see, this is when they start like whatever a qualitative states of a universal fact is. So it's like you start getting these weird things if you're talking about these big facts, the universal facts. And so basically what it is, then they go down and say, look, and is this regress vicious? And they give a few arguments to that fact to support that. Ugubi says he thinks it's odd for the atheist or presentist view to be able to account for this. Big fact? Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree. But I think that's what's happening here. Getting an A for saying everything is subjective felt dirty and undeserved, so I would like to hear your point of view. On what? I think you should get A's in classes. That's the point of being in school. If you want to learn something, you can also learn something, but the fact that you learn something doesn't always align with what your grade is. So you have to try to learn something and also get a good grade. And getting a good grade, if you didn't learn anything, that's unfortunate, but like I don't actually feel like you should feel dirty for getting an A. I mean, if you want to put like a value on your grades at like how much work you put in, you can feel bad, but like it doesn't really matter. Subjective is stupid. It's fine. Hey, if you didn't, like, you ran around them in circles, Bubba Bloop, that's alright. You can feel bad about it, but, like, it doesn't... It's like worrying about your grades after you already have a job. It doesn't matter anymore. You didn't take the grade away from anyone else. Which is funny, because when I was in school, we had grade deflation. They were trying to raise the profile of the university I went to. So it was actually harder to get an A. They were making it harder and harder to get A's because they wanted the people who got good grades to be like really, really good, like special. And so actually in that case, your A could take away from other people's A's. But that's usually unusual. Yeah. Alright. We can talk about like academic silliness also, but anything else you guys want to ask about this? Because like, I mean, grading on a curve is funny, but yeah, it's like, all right, let's see. Anything else I want to say about the end of this? No, this is basically, and then they started wrapping up. Once they explained why the regress was vicious in this case, that was it with the argument. They couldn't get out of it by using the big fact, and then without the big fact, they were stuck with a vicious regress. And once they went to a vicious regress that was vicious, then that was it, and that was where the author ended up. Explanandum, so trendy. I know. I see it more and more. Definiendum, definiens. I'm guilty of using that. Okay. So what is a benign regress? Okay. What a benign vicious regress would... Well, there's no benign vicious. I mean, unless you mean like there's a slash between them. Either, yeah, everyone's guilty of using them at some point. You have to. I mean, sometimes it really does do work for you, so you don't have to keep repeating the definition of the word we're saying. Just say, okay, the explanans or the explanandum, or definiendum. Yeah, so let's get the little lull face. So, what a benign vicious regress. Well, vicious regress is when it really depends what you're investigating. And, like, what are you supposed to do? If you're trying to explain something, but every time you try to explain it, you get another problem where you've got something, like, the same problem to explain, then it's vicious. Yeah, see, you felt bad because everyone else did work. Okay, well, that was a social issue. A non-vicious regress. What would that be? I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But, sometimes it's like you've got math that refers to itself and you got a regress. And it's like, well, that's okay because you already understand the math at the first level. And so the fact that the math applies to itself, that's okay. Like, say you've got like a liar paradox. You can't get out of it because every time at every level it's the same problem. But like sometimes if you got like self-reflexive things, it's like that's okay. You can have a regress there if you're sort of like maintaining the information level at the same level all the time, but you don't need any more. I think not all regresses are vicious, like not all circularities are viciousness. Yeah, is just bad. Yeah, you can have a benign regress. That would be a good one, or just a non-harmful regress. So, like, it's regresses are a problem if you're expecting to get something out of them that you're not getting. If you're just, as the author said here, passing the buck, then it's a problem. If you weren't expecting anything more than what you got, then it might be okay. All right, but that's it for this paper. I mean, I'm going to keep streaming for a bit, so, I mean, this is just it. I'm going to cut for YouTube is basically here. So, stream marker. Okay.